Good morning, everyone, and happy Easter. As I began working on this message, I didn't know whether Easter would be celebrated individually or whether we could all be together as a church. Now, it turns out we're celebrating in our own homes. If you're like me, you'll miss singing "Christ the Lord is Risen Today," one of my favorite Easter hymns, so I'm going to look for a recording of it online. But the first Easter wasn't a glorious event with masses of people celebrating, Easter lilies abounding, or hymns of rejoicing. We're inside today because we're concerned about a virus. When we venture out, we do it highly cautiously. In the days after the crucifixion, the followers of Jesus probably felt a similar caution. Were they in danger? Was the Sanhedrin going to hunt them down? Was Rome going to target them next? They would have felt a bit aimless. What were they supposed to do now? How could they just return to their daily lives? They were different now. Everything Jesus had taught, everything they'd seen and experienced, had changed them. Of course, they'd also thought it would change the world. They'd thought they were participating in a great new dawn of God's kingdom. What now? Every account about the followers of Jesus show that they just hadn't believed anything bad could happen to him. Of course, a certain amount of denial is inevitable in those situations. We just don't want to hear someone tell us that they know they're going to die. My father tried to tell us, and our family just couldn't hear it. Jesus had done the same. He knew his actions would get him killed. Now, while he would pray to be released from it, all along he knew that if it was God's will, he would face his death. He spoke of the cross, so he must have expected his death would be brought about by that form of execution. He even turned it into a symbol for self-sacrifice and service. The friends of Jesus must have spent the hours of sorrow remembering all of that. They may have said to each other over and over, "He tried to tell us. We just didn't listen. Why didn't we listen? We might have been able to save him." And someone else might have said with clear-sighted honesty, "It wouldn't have made any difference. Jesus was his own man. He believed this is what God wanted. We wouldn't have been able to stop him." And they would have sat in silence for a moment, perhaps thinking of the times they'd known what God wanted, but failed to do it. There might even have been a measure of hope in the reminder that Jesus had known what was coming. Because if Jesus really had expected this to happen, then maybe there was a purpose to it all. Maybe there was something good to be gained. And that flicker of hope may have given at least some of them some strength in the heavy hours after Jesus breathed his last. But part of the time, there would have been a crushing depression, the weight of guilt, denial, bargaining, pain, anger, all the things we know that humans normally feel in the midst of sorrow. Now, the women who went to the tomb were fortunate, not just because they were the first to hear the news of life, but because they had a task. They had a gift of love that they could give to Jesus. They could prepare his body for its long sleep. But in truth, they were blessed before even that began. I wonder if they ever thought about it. Jesus had said, "Blessed are you who mourn, for you shall be comforted." By the way, comfort in the biblical sense means strength, not the lack of pain or distress. In other words, Jesus never said that we wouldn't hurt because of loss, just that we would be strengthened in bearing it. Now, my dad was also a pastor, and he saw another layer of meaning in the words of Jesus. Grief in itself means that we've been blessed. How sad it would be not to feel pain at the loss of someone. It's a strange blessing, but I've remembered it every time that I grieve. How blessed I am to be able to be sad. That means I knew someone who blessed my life Sure, I've lost them, but I was blessed by knowing them. I've been blessed by the giving and the receiving of friendship and love. Did the friends and family of Jesus remember that in their hours of grief? Did they remember how incredibly fortunate they'd been just to have known him? The stories of their sorrow weren't passed down to us, and the dawn of Easter morning didn't change things all at once. In fact, the first people to hear the stories of life from the women who went to the tomb thought they'd gone mad with grief. But slowly they began to realize that something real had happened. And we see the evidence of it in the friends of Jesus. The experience was powerful. It moved a little slowly, especially at first, but it was like a tide that couldn't be turned. The sun was rising and could not be stopped. Scoffers tried to belittle it. Enemies tried to lie about it. But the persistent, irresistible strength of life and love and hope started washing over the world. And eventually it did change that world. It continues to change the lives of people every day. Jesus alive, he lives in millions of people to this very day. He walks among us. He loves among us. So rejoice and happy Easter. Amen.